Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy is Ted.
And what's the worst thing the DM can do? Start this video by thanking Nord Games, our sponsor. You can find a link to Nord Games in the description below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off. There's also a link down there that'll give you a discount on anything in the Nord shop.
Games by gamers for gamers.
Go get some Nord Games in your life. Today we are doing a new series we're starting, and it's like the worst GM mistakes, right? Is that what we're looking for?
That's what we're looking at. The worst things you can do as a GM.
Okay, the worst things you can do as a GM. And we figure this one will be fun because you guys can commiserate with us down in the comments of it as it goes. Because, we've made the mistakes, we've played with the mistakes. It happens. So I actually was inspired by Tim Kearney from Absolute Tabletop and Tabletop Terrors on this one. He actually articulated something really well that is what I believe, but but he articulated it better than I would have, and that is, one of the worst mistakes you can make as a DM is creating solutions, right? We do this all the time. It's a trap. Spoonie has a really great, video on this where they were talking about playing Top Secret back in the day.
It's counter monkey, Spoonie, however you want to refer to it.
Yeah, Noah Outweiler. But it illustrates the point really well. As a GM, when you create solutions in your games for your players to come up with, what you're really going to create is a problem for yourself and the game you're running. Because what tends to happen is the game gets bogged down. The players never come up with your solution that you came up with. So this always tends to happen where it's like, oh, in order to move the story forward, in order for the players to do anything else, they have to come up with this one solution. But they haven't come up with it, so the story doesn't come along, or it relies on a die roll that never happens.
Exactly, and I've made that exact mistake, and like it was after a discussion about this particular topic previously, and I'm like, oh crap, why did I have him make a roll? I wanted to just say this. So like I had to. It didn't matter what he rolled. He had to find it because that's where the story was going. But I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah, you just gotta hope he rolls well, and that's recent. It's an easy trap to fall into. As GMs, we're just like, oh, make a roll, but you should never ask for a roll unless you really want one.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Tim actually articulated really well was, as GMs, it's our job to come up with problems, not solutions.
So you present a problem, and the players, you might have some ideas, but it doesn't matter what your ideas are. Let the players come up with something, and chances are that they're going to say something that's going to work, and whatever one you like best, have that be your solution, and the players get to be happy because they figured it out. They solved the problem. They get to be the hero, which is what D&D typically is.
So, generally, when I do things, if I even come up with a solution, I'll put out there, this is the problem, right? And that a good example would be like one of the games where I ran, where it was kind of a riddle, and it was a room. They found themselves in a room filling up with water, and doors would open, and sharks would come in, and they would have to, they had to find a way out of this room. Now I had a couple ideas. Like I had an idea for how you could disarm the room, the trap. I had the idea, well, maybe they're going to wedge open one of these doors the sharks comes out of and try and swim into wherever the sharks come from. And I'm like, either one of those will kind of work for me, but I wasn't married to either or any, really. In my mind, is whatever they came up with that seems reasonable, I would probably allow to work. As long as they put some effort into it.
Yeah, I don't want to allow my players to just, well, can I make a roll and solve this? To me, that's not a whole lot of fun. But if you come up with an idea, even if it's not fantastic, and then succeed on a die roll, okay, yeah, no problems. I'll let that slide because the players did it, not, well, they sat and grinded over the issue until they came up with the exact solution that I had in mind.
Right. Or the other kind of like the other end of that is like sometimes a player will come up with a really crazy idea, and I don't want to be the DM to just say no, you can't do that. You can't try that. One, you can just be like you can try that, do the Matt Mercer thing, which like all DMs kind of do. And if you've been doing it for a while and you're the say yes kind of DM, you can try that. Uh, Now here's the caveat: like if it's really ridiculous and crazy, I'll be like, give me a die roll. And like if they crit it or something, I'll be like, all right, it's gonna work. But
Now there is exceptions to that rule. There was a story that went around Facebook, a handful of months ago about the dwarf that fell off the mountain in heavy armor, and he's like, well, can I flap my arms and try and fly? And the DM's like, sure, give me a roll. Well, he rolled a natural 20, and now he's apparently flying. And I'm like, no, like, you're not going to fly. You roll a natural 20, I'm not going to allow you to fly, but you could reach out and grab something, and you're holding on. You're not dying now.
there's a difference between impossible and far fetched.
Yes.
Yeah, like if you're like, yeah, can I get a die roll to try and save myself? That's different. Or if there happen to be like already in the scene, there's flying monsters, down there. Can I get a die roll to try and guide my fall so I land on one of those? Sure, why not?
Yeah, I would absolutely allow that one, but, a person without a flying speed attempting to flap their arms and fly, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I don't care how many natural 20s in a row you roll. I'm not allowing it.
Well, it's not even not allowing it. It's just like some things are ridiculous and they break the physics of our made up world, right? So that's different. Like
True.
someone might go, oh, well, I have Misty Step. Can I try and Misty Step back to the cliff?
Absolutely.
And as a DM, I might say, give me a die roll, or I might say, sure, go ahead, use the resource. You get to save yourself. It just comes down to letting your players be creative and trusting them to come up with good ideas. So that's why you want to create the problems and not so much worry about the solutions. You know, Within reason too. Just like you have to have realistic expectations of your players. Of no, you can't just flap your arms and fly. You can't put a problem out there that has no solution, and, and expect them to come up with one.
Right. And that becomes a trap for GMs who go too far down this line of thinking. If you just say, well, all I'm going to do is create problems, let them solve it, then now you've gone too far. Now you're taking it, in the wrong direction. You need to find problems that if you can come up with multiple solutions, then your players are going to be able to as well, and then you can move on from there and work on this together. If for some reason your players are having a bad night, or the person who usually is the thinker in the group, is unable to make it, and you've come to the puzzle, well, then allow your players to get some clues or get a little bit of help, and you could not spoon feed them, but give hints as to what they might be able to do, and allow them to use dice rolls to put those pieces or hints together and be able to come up with a solution that's going to work, because they need to be able to. I mean, we're talking about a game of heroes. Heroes are expected most of the time to succeed. So
That's why, like, when I do this and I come up with the problems, I like to like just work these problems through in my head and have a couple ideas. Like I said, I'm not married to them. I might jot them down for, like you said, if they're stuck, if they can't think of anything, then you might give them hints or clues. You may require a roll, you may not. You may require a roll, but maybe you scale it. And I do this often with my difficulty checks for rolls. And it's like, at a 5 they get a little bit of information, but at a 30 they get tons of information. Depending on how well or how badly they roll. And a lot of times, if it's a skill they're trained in, usually like you're almost guaranteed a 5, +3, +2. You're kind of guaranteed. You can't get lower than a 1 on the die. So you're going to be able to at least give them one hint.
so in my current game, the last session, Griffin Gaff came under siege, and they were under siege for a while. I didn't plan, oh, well, this is what the players are going to do. I didn't plan to say, okay, well, here's how the enemy army is going to be thwarted and pushed away. I'm like, well, this is what I would do. And I gave it to the players, and they came up with loads of ideas that I wasn't, I wasn't thinking of, and they've got all these solutions into work. Oh, well, we're gonna go out and do some nighttime raids. We're gonna call for allies. We're gonna do all these things. It's like excellent. They're putting their brain power to use to save this town against an oncoming horde.
Well, also, I feel like too, as the GM, when you allow your players that freedom, that agency, like oftentimes they're going to come up with cool and interesting things that you didn't maybe think of, and it's going to add to the story. And like years later, you guys are going to have stories to tell about that time. Fenric the dwarf did X.
Well, I mean, those things where the player comes up with it, they're going to be far more memorable moments because it was a plan that they enacted. It's something that was their brainchild, and they're like, oh, we did this, and wasn't that amazing that this scene happened or that scene happened, and we've been gaming together for more than 2 decades, and we have loads of those stories that are all about those type of incidents.
Well, and it creates fun on both sides of the screen, right? When you're doing this, one is the players don't know what the problems are going to be that you're going to present them with for the most part, so they get to be surprised, and there's a certain amount of fun to that, and then they get to have fun of trying to come up with creative ways to overcome these problems. Well, you as the GM, if you can let go and be like, I really don't know what they're going to do, I don't know how they're going to get out of this or what the solution's going to be, you get to be surprised with what they come up with and the story that's going to be told at the table, all because you all got to contribute. And it wasn't just the DM going, no, this is the problem. These are the only ways you can fix it. You're going to need die rolls. You're going to need this. You're going to need that. So many times we've seen just games come to an ass grinding halt, all because the DM's like, nope, the only way through this is you have to solve it exactly like this, and then you need to make the die roll, and you never want to do that. Don't pigeonhole yourself as the GM. Don't pigeonhole your players. Have fun and let everyone be imaginative and creative and build this story together.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how long you give me. The only way I'm solving a Rubik's cube is to move the stickers.
So with that, guys, how do you do this in your game? Do you create solutions and problems? Is this something you want to implement? Tell us your horror stories. We got a place for it down in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
While you jump down there, don't forget to check out Nord Games and that coupon code.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.
Right? We do this all the time. It's a trap. Spoonie has a really great, video on this where they're talking about playing Top Secret back in the day.
It's counter monkey, Spoonie, however you want to refer to it.
Yeah, Noah Outweiler. But it illustrates the point really well. As a GM, when you create solutions in your games for your players to come up with, what you're really going to create is a problem for yourself and the game you're running. Because what tends to
Games by gamers for gamers.
You'll get some Nord games in your life. Today we are doing a new series we're starting, and it's like the worst GM mistakes, right? Is that what we're looking for?
That's what we're looking at. The worst things that you can do as a GM.
Okay, the worst things you can do as a GM. And we figure this one will be fun because you guys can commiserate with us down in the comments of it as it goes. Because, we've made the mistakes, we've played with the mistakes. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And what's the worst thing the DM can do? Start this video by thanking Nord Games, our sponsor. You can find a link to Nord Games in the description below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off. There's also a link down there that'll give you a discount on anything in the Nord shop. It happens. So I actually was inspired by Tim Kearney from Absolute Tabletop and Tabletop Terrors on this one. He actually articulated something really well that is what I believe, but he articulated it better than I would have, and that is, one of the worst mistakes you can make as a DM is creating solutions. Right. What happen is the game gets bogged down. The players never come up with your solution that you came up with. So this always tends to happen where it's like, oh, in order to move the story forward, in order for the players to do anything else, they have to come up with this one solution. But they haven't come up with it, so the story doesn't come along, or it relies on a die roll that never happens.
Exactly. And I've made that exact mistake. And like